After a prolonged struggle for independence, India finally became independent on the 15th of August 1947. And ever since then, we have had a democratic government. But even before the colonial era, the people of India were somehow always on the suppressed side of their rulers. You see, we've always had monarchies. The lives of the subjects always depended upon the ruler. Depending upon the nature of the ruler, he was either considerate towards the welfare of his people or not. And that made a lot of difference. After that, the people also had to endure the British rule for almost over a century. And the battle towards freedom from this autocratic power was a long and difficult struggle. A struggle which saw the participation of many sections of our society coming together. The reason why people from various backgrounds joined the struggle was because they were inspired by the ideas of freedom and equality. And they were also inspired by the thought that in the independent India, their opinion will matter in the form of votes, especially where the important decisions regarding the nation were concerned. But in the colonial era, that wasn't the case. In fact, the British never considered the welfare of the Indian people on whom they were ruling, to such an extent that they just made laws that would only benefit them. As we know, under the British rule, the law was made just to benefit the British Crown. So there were many rules that the people had to follow that were absolutely unfair and that trespassed many of their rights. But sadly, the Indian people had to live under such an oppressive colonial rule for a very long time. Also, there was a fear that going against the British government might put them in danger. But then all of this was changed when the freedom movement began. The nationalists began to openly criticize the British government. They had also started making a lot of demands from the British government. In the year 1885, the Indian National Congress said that they wanted elected members to be there in the legislature so that they had the right to discuss the budget and ask questions. Now, in response to all these demands, the Government of India Act 1909 was passed, and this act brought about a limited increase of Indians in the governance of British India. It allowed for some Indian elected representation. Notice on how the word some is used to describe this form. It tells us something, that is, even though the act was made in response to the growing Indian reformist demands, it was just made to quieten the voices of the rebellion. But it was a step forward, no doubt. But the Indians still had a long way to go before they could get the kind of government that was able to understand their needs. Now, one thing is clear from all of this. It is that the early legislatures that were under the British government were just made in response to the growing demands of the nationalists. But there were many conditions to this reform, like all adults couldn't vote. And also, the people could not participate in the decision-making processes. All of these things gave the nationalists who were fighting for our freedom a vision of how things should be after India gained its independence. They avowed that all people in independent India would be able to participate in the decision-making processes of their government. And after independence, they were going to be the citizens of a free country. And once they were free, they were determined to have a government that would be fair, unbiased as well as efficient. That's why effort was made to create a system that would be foolproof, ensuring just that. So an idea was conceived. That would be a government built on the principle of equality and freedom. A government that would not do what it felt like. A government that was sensitive towards the needs and demands of its people. These dreams and aspirations of the freedom struggle are seen in the Indian Constitution as it was written after being inspired by these ideas. An important thing to note is that the Constitution laid down the principle of universal adult franchise, which means that all adult citizens of the country have the right to vote. Later, we will also find out about the role the Parliament plays in our democracy and its structure. And like I said, the whole point of democracy is the idea of consent. When I say consent, I mean the desire, the approval and participation of the people in running their own country. The term government of the people, by the people and for the people is the basic principle on which the foundation of our democratic government is laid upon. Basically, when I'm talking about democracy, I am saying that every individual, the citizen, is equally important. And in principle, the government as well as any other public institution can only function with the trust of its citizens. So how does the individual participate in running its government? First, it has to choose its government, and that is done simply through election. See, this is how it goes. First, people elect their representatives to the parliament by casting votes in elections. Then a group from amongst these elected representatives is the one that forms the government. Then the parliament, a body that is made up of our elected representatives, makes the decision for our country. Now basically what happens is that once the elections have taken place, the parliament needs to perform many important functions. Let us discuss each one of them in detail. The first function of the parliament is to select the national government. And like I said, the parliament consists of two houses, the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha. But most importantly, it consists of the President of India. In this session, we have discussed about how the parliament enables people to participate in the decision-making process and control the government through their consent. We also discussed about the key features of the two houses of the parliament, namely Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, and how members are elected in Lok Sabha. In the next video, we will discuss the key functions of the parliament. So stay tuned. Until then, keep learning.
Tutormate. For more amazing video lectures, download the free app on Apple App Store or Google Play Store